What's up, everybody? Did you see The Dark Side of Pride? That was a documentary on Vice. I was supposed to be a part of it. I wasn't, but me and James get to talk about it and talk about how we felt about it and what we thought. All right, check it out.
1978とある田舎町で生まれて移り住んだ新宿で育ちこの町で起きたこれまでの俺たちのここまでの生い立ちはほんのまた序の口試されたいちいち正してきた過ち騙し合いやからしないはスニッチの始まり放課後の登山所児童館にホームアローンそんな時間はほったらかして向かったとある場所
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Yamatodamashii podcast. I'm back with Enson, and we're going to be talking all about the Pride episodes that happened that Vice recently released on the Dark Side of the Cage series. There's no better man to talk to you about this, right? I mean, you lived that life in that era, so I'm really excited to get your takes on the episode. First things first, I got a lot of people asking me, how come you weren't on the episode, but given your history?
I was in prison. Yeah, so it was actually the timing where I was supposed to come back. I was actually going to come back to Japan for like a week, and I was going to fly to LA for the shooting. And as you know, I got arrested off the plane, put in jail for 99 days, where I think the timeline for Vice wasn't appropriate for them to be able to push. I guess they had a timeline when they had to get the episode out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I was supposed to be one of the main guys on the show, I think, because I think I was one of the ones that was willing to say a lot of things. And it was kind of cool. They were really cool. It wasn't like, oh, you're arrested, okay, bye. They were actually willing to wait. They waited for a while. And they even thought of, okay, if I do get out, they might fly to Japan to film me instead. And when, we didn't even know when I was getting out. So when the day that I was getting out kept getting extended, it got extended to a point where they were like, whoa, we can't wait anymore. They had to go ahead with it.
Yeah, that period of time, it was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know whether you were going to be in for 30 days or if you were going to be in for 4 years. It was
Yeah.
So, were these the same people? You've worked with Vice in the past, right? Just curious, was it the same people that reached out?
No, I worked with Vice Japan.
Different.
And this one was with I think the US Vice team. The crazy thing about that is before I went to jail, we had everything booked. I had my flights booked. I had my hotel booked. I had my rent-a-car booked. So because I was in jail, I couldn't cancel my rent-a-car. So I actually lost out that I was renting a car. I think I was going to be in LA for like 3 or 4 days. So I lost about $400 on that. I couldn't. I mean, if I could get on the internet and cancel it, it would have been refundable. But I couldn't even get on the internet to cancel it. I'm hoping Vice was able to get some return from the flight and the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure what happened with that either. But yeah, so that's how set it was.
Mm-hmm. So we both watched the episodes. What's your overall thoughts on the episode?
I thought it was good, and the thing that really caught me off guard was there was a lot of things I didn't know about. I mean, I wasn't, that guy who was like the management and got threatened and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't in that shoes where I was a manager dealing with the promotion in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fighter dealing with the promotion as a fighter. I was living in Japan. I never experienced any type of Yakuza clout from Pride. And I find that when I talk to a lot of foreign fighters, they all had, a lot of, threats or scary, ultimatums thrown at them using the Yakuza as backing. But I've never experienced that. So a lot of the stuff they're talking about, I definitely had a whole different view because I was coming from a whole different angle.
Yeah. No, I thought there was good episodes, right? It was definitely good TV. It was good to watch. There was some bits I was surprised they didn't highlight a bit more.
Like what?
The competitive nature of it, when Pride was up against K1. And obviously they touched on a bit with the rival show with Inoki and that, but it was really cutthroat between K1 and Pride back then. And then also, we'll get into this, but one of the key people they said was the sponsor from the Yakuza. he died as well, right? And they didn't even mention that he had died in 2008 in like a bathtub, which was kind of shocking. So I was surprised they
Who
didn't
was that?
go
Was that the Morishita?
Momose.
Did they? I think who?
Momose. So they touched on Momose was like
I don't know if Momose did he. I think Morishita died in the bathtub.
when Marista he was on a hung it like was found they found
Yeah,
hanging,
but
right?
I was thinking it was in a bathroom like that. Yeah.
But Momose died as well in a
Yeah, I
bathtub.
know Momose died. She died in a bathtub. I never heard that.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just looking into the articles, and that's what Zach Arnold reported in 2008. So,
Oh, Zach Arnold would know. Yeah.
yeah. So, so let's get into some of it, right? So, a lot of the documentary is about the Yakuza involvement with Pride. When did you first hear about or notice that involvement in Pride?
Well, I was already living in Japan for over a decade. So I didn't need to hear about it or see it. I knew it was prominent. I knew it was around. In fact, some of the guys I knew were actually some of the backers. And even once when I had a big problem with a newspaper agency that was trying to sue me, the Pride Yakuza guys came out and helped me solve that situation. So I knew some of them personally. I even in touch with some of the guys right now. I mean, the guy who came out and helped me, the one of the backers for Pride, I just went to dinner with him about 3 months ago.
Nice. Still good friends to this day. I love it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And a lot of the foreign fighters talked about, like you mentioned earlier, threats and that side of things. Is that something that you ever witnessed or?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I've never. Of course, I think they knew of my connections, and they could never use that clout on me. So of course, I've never seen that. Like for example, Yakuza threats, um, uh, throne fights. Those are two things that were obsolete with me because they knew I had a lot of backing that they couldn't threaten me with Yakuza power. They knew I would never throw a fight. So those two things for me, I can't even comment and say no, that's bullshit or that's exaggerated because it was non-existent with me. And apparently, if these fighters are talking about it, whether they're exaggerating or not, it's actually something that was existent with the other fighters, especially the foreign fighters.
Yeah, because in the doc it highlights Mark Coleman versus Takada, right? And that was a big thing.
Yeah.
Do you remember hearing anything about that, like prior to the incident, or is it all the noise kind of came after?
No, I didn't hear anything. So I'm the type of guy who was very vocal, and I was somebody that they couldn't control. So as far as if they're having a fixed fight happen in Pride, I was probably the last one they would want to know. Being worried probably that I would come out vocal about it or I would confront them with it and threaten them with something because I took pride in the ring that I was fighting in. And for me, my whole thing was we fight real fights here. I mean, if you want to do pro wrestling, do it in a pro wrestling ring. Don't disrespect the fighters in the Pride ring that are fighting and willing to die in the ring with a fake fight. So I would have been really offended if I knew ahead of time, and I would have probably tried to, with my power, put a stop to it. So that was not heard of from me. I never heard anything about it. I saw it. I saw the fight, and for me, right out as soon as I saw it, I knew there was something very fishy. And one of the reporters actually asked me in an interview right after that, what did you think of the Mark Coleman Takada fight? And I didn't want to say it was a fake fight. That was bullshit because although I knew 99% that it was a fake fight, it wasn't 100%. So I didn't want to come on a limb and say that. So all I said was that it shouldn't be in the Pride ring because all I can say is they fought different rules from me, which insinuated it wasn't a real fight. And from that instance, me and Sakuraba, we were like the top fighters in Pride, or not the best fighters, but more the most selling fighters,
Most popular.
the most popular fighters. Yeah. So me and Sakuraba did a lot of personal appearances for TV, for magazines, or interviews, and Takada was so pissed off at what I said he was actually the top guy in taking care of Sakuraba at the time. Sakuraba was fighting out of Takada Dojo. And Takada banned Sakuraba from being in any interviews or any appearances with me.
Well, and I mean, you've had that. It's quite a well-known history, right, with Takada. I think you guys are okay now, but at one point, it's a pretty ugly history between you guys, right?
Yeah, well, one, I had a bad feeling about him because he was a pro wrestler trying to come into the MMA ring as a pro wrestler, not trying to learn as an MMA fighter and fight as an MMA fighter. He was trying to throw his clout with the promoters to be able to fight in the MMA ring as a pro wrestler. And I felt that it was a little disrespectful to the fighters who've been going through the grind from the very beginning when the sport was illegal, building the sport to what it is. As a pro wrestler's fame, he comes into the Pride ring and starts doing, different rules where he could feel safe or, avoid big injury by playing with the promoters and changing the rules or straight up fighting fake fights. So we had a little bit of a thing like that. I kind of brushed it aside, put it away, and the incident that happened was he was in we were out at night, and he got jumped by this real notorious gang called the Kanto Rengo in Japan. It's a real notorious gang, and him and his rugby. The guy was a rugby. He was on the Olympic rugby team, but he a national team, and he was with Takada, and they tried to stop a domestic argument between one of the gangsters and one of the girls. And those guys, of course, you don't want to do that. You don't want to ever get involved in domestics. And those guys got pissed off, and they pretty much beat up the rugby guy. And Takada didn't want him to be the next guy to get beat up, so he didn't physically try to stop them. Instead, he screamed for help. And I was so happened to be around that area. He saw me, asked me for help, and I helped him out. I put my reputation, my face on the line. I went and helped those guys out, and I didn't get jumped and I didn't get targeted because they respected me and those gangsters knew who I was. I had a personal relationship with them, so I helped him with that, got him out of that, and for me, I felt there was no thank you, there was no appreciation. He never came out of his way to mention that night. And for me, I felt that wasn't a real man. That wasn't someone who, showed appreciation for, the help that someone gives them. And I voiced it. I voiced it out loud on media everywhere. And he still never came back and said, showed his appreciation. So I just felt that he wasn't a real man. And I voiced it. I voiced it a lot. And, just recently, well, before when RIZIN started and I started visiting RIZIN, he was in one of the TV shows that I was going to be in, and we're in the next room together. And I figured out, we just to squash it. So I asked him for his time whenever to talk to him, and we squashed it. So he showed his appreciation, and yeah, I think he pretended that he didn't remember. But regardless of whether that was a bullshit lie or not, he did bow his head down and show his remorse and show his appreciation eventually. So right now we're cool.
You're fun. Good. It's something I've been dying to ask you about from this episode, right? So at one point they say in 2003, there's the big Tokyo Dome show, and backstage there's this big war between two opposite Yakuza factions, right? And they paint it, and the manager guy kind of paints it as like there was 70 on one side, 150 on the other. Please give me some context. Like is this true?
Well, again, do I know if it 100% if it happened or not? I don't know. Was I there? Yes. Did I see anything? No. So I would, if I had to make an educated guess, I think it's exaggerated because if there's a fight between over 170 gangsters, I think it'd be pretty known and pretty prominent, especially if it was in the back where the fighters were. But yeah, I heard nothing about it. I like I said, that kind of stuff will be kept out of my ears. I was one of those guys that they didn't want to know about a lot of stuff that happens in Pride.
Did you? I mean, they kind of alluded that there was this shift in power with different groups. Did you get any impression of that was going on behind the scenes?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. That's why when I saw that, I was thinking, shit, I wonder how good an interview I would have been. I mean, a lot of stuff that was said, and a lot of stuff that they said happened, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't aware of it at all. So,
and if anyone was going to see it, I feel like it would have been you, right? Because like you say, you knew a lot of the characters.
yeah, you know, that's what I would say. But, you know, then again, I take that others, you know, I look at it from afar and I think to myself, shit, I would easily claim that I was in the inside of Pride. I knew everything about Pride. And it's like the stuff I saw in the documentary, like, fuck. Maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did, you know?
Did you, I mean, how well did you know some of the characters they talked about? So they talked about Morashita, right? The guy with the glasses.
I knew him personally.
Yeah. Okay. What do you remember from the time when he passed away?
3 days before he passed away, after a press conference, he came up to me and he told me, he expressed to me how excited he is about next year's Pride and telling me how, yeah, we got to have more fighters like you that fight, not concerned about winning, but to give it out their all. And, you know, that to me, it wasn't someone that was about to kill himself. It was someone that was really looking forward to the future of Pride. But as you know, suicide is a mental health issue. So, you know, as you could be speaking, you know, normally, when that sickness hits you at a certain time, whether you're you know, you get a fight with a girlfriend or you get depressed over some sad news, maybe it just hit him and he decided to do that. Or the rumors around the fighters is that he was killed, not suicide. But we don't have facts.
Do you remember what the feeling was from the other foreign fighters when they heard the news of Morashita passing?
Yeah, well, they were actually didn't know what was going on. They were asking me. And I only could relay what I thought. That I thought, you know, I heard he got killed. And the real weird thing about it was when you have a death, usually, whether what country it is, usually they don't come out with what they thought the cause of death was until they do a thorough investigation. The weird part about this situation was the day they found him that night, they came out with a report that he killed himself. And I thought that was a bit unusual on how fast they came out with that diagnosis of the way of death.
Yeah, that does seem a bit strange. And so the other character they talked a lot was Momose, right? The guy with the hat. Is that someone you met while you were there?
Yeah. Oh, I met Momose. I saw him sitting there all the time. I noticed a lot of fighters like Nogueira and Vander Silva, they would pretty much kiss his ass, and after the fight, they would go out and shake his hand and say hi to him. As for me personally, I never had any personal interactions with him. He never did help me in any way. So for me, I saw Sakakibara as the vice president, Morishita as the president. So when I got out of the ring, I felt no desire to thank him for anything. I felt no desire to see him, and I wasn't going to go through the motions and, you know, kiss ass and because everyone else is doing it. Yeah. So for me, I you know, I saw him there all the time, and I heard that he was one of the big sponsors, but I don't to this day I don't know the reason why all the fighters would go out and shake his hand after their fights and, you know, make a big deal out of it. I've seen him at the after parties a lot, but I wasn't a guy to kiss up to anyone. So I saw him there. He would nod hi to me, but I never did ever try to force a conversation or get to know him. So I really didn't know him. I know his second-hand man really well, and we still have a good relationship today. Ota.
So one of the other big elements of the documentary is this manager, the manager of Krokop, and then he becomes the manager of Fedor. He's got a pretty interesting story of how he had a gun pointed to his head and he had to give up the rights to Fedor. And in that, he says that he was, you know, surrounded by a bunch of Yakuza. Sakakibara was there in front of him, and he had no choice but to sign over the rights. What's your take on that story?
If I had to bet on it, I call bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said again, I was a character that they kept that whole side of it away from. And I don't know. It's for me. For me, it's just the Sakakibara that I know then and today. Him having a yakuza there in front of him, making direct threats to someone's life to sign a contract. I can't. I don't see him doing that. Uh, to see a yakuza come out in an incident and point a gun to someone's head, I can't see that happening. You know, so for me, I'd say like, ooh, that's a little dramatized. But then again, that's another side of the story that made me think like, holy shit, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I knew about the whole situation and about the whole thing about Japan and the yakuza, because I feel like I'm really in depth, probably more than any other fighter there is in the yakuza world. The friends that I have, the connections I have. And I've never seen a single Yakuza ever garnish a gun. Ever. The only times I've seen guns in Japan was from the Chinese mafia. That's it. Never with the Yakuza. In my 34 years here, being in and out and seeing some of the top guys in Japan, I've never seen a single Yakuza carry a gun, let alone use it and point it at somebody.
I think to put it into context in terms of your knowledge and dealings with the Yakuza, when I've met people that have previously been in that organization through you, and they've told me stories, half the stories you don't even remember about yourself, which is hilarious. He's telling stories about you beating up 4 or 5 guys, and you're just like, God, maybe I have. I can't even remember. And he's there like witnessing it. So, yeah, the fact that
You
in
know,
all your time you've never seen one with a gun really made me super suspicious of that story, that he's got a gun to his head. And
yeah,
like you say, even
you know what it is about me not remembering stories. My life back in the day was so wild that you know if in your lifetime, James, if you had to get your friends together and kidnap someone and bring them to another location and threaten them and get information from them, you would probably remember that for the rest of your life. To a point where the time, the smell of the room, the day you did it. For me, that type of incidents, not necessarily just kidnapping someone, but other incidents, happen so often that I mean, I can't even remember it. That's how people tell me your life is like a movie. And back in that day, I mean, anybody, Rampage, Chuck Liddell, anybody who's come up to Pride and hung out with me in that day, they'll probably tell you that same story, how crazy my life was.
yeah.
And it's interesting that I find that a lot, that the people tell stories about me and I'm like, no, I don't think that happened. That's pretty crazy. And then I hear the same story from 2 or 3 different sources. I'm like, holy shit, I think that might have really happened.
It's crazy because you've never been like a drinker or anything. It's not like you were like drinking and you forgot this kind of stuff. These are just so much
No,
going
totally
on.
sober every single time. So
Yeah. 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 Hey, Vice needs a whole series on you, is in my
no
opinion.
shit. They could probably do a whole series on me,
Mm.
all the shit I've been through.
It's funny because I was thinking if they do a season 2 of Dark Side of the Cage, I was thinking about what potential topics they should do. And obviously there's, like I say, you've got your whole fair share. But even something about Kid, I think would be a good story, right? You know, how he
Oh, it
got
would be
into
good.
MMA, how he's ascended to be, one of the biggest stars, the fallout you guys had. I think that would make for a really good episode if they
The
continue
problems
this
we
series.
had with the Yakuza with Kid, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of ins and outs, right? So who knows? Maybe see you on season 2.
Well,
Um,
the director of Vice actually did message me and say that possibly do a part 2.
Nice. Yeah. Well, there
Yeah,
was so
so
much
we'll
with
see.
Pride, especially like so much to cover.
Yeah, there is a lot to cover with Pride.
You felt like almost two episodes just wasn't enough with all the different stuff that was going on.
Well, there's Pride and then there's Enson Pride.
Yeah, yeah. That would be super interesting. So the kind of episode kind of culminates in the fact that there was this 2006 article, right, that exposes the Yakuza ties and it leads to Fuji TV pulling out. Is that something you saw happening? Now, I know this was kind of after your Pride career, right? But did you foresee Pride going in that direction where it just...
No, I didn't ever think that would ever happen. And it's amazing because they're real careful about having the connection with Yakuza become public. Because the funny thing about Japan is everyone knows about it. As long as it doesn't become public, nothing happens. But you know, if you ask any fan and ask them, do you think Pride or even Rising, Shuto, Deep, do you think they have connections with the underworld? I think every fan would say, "Ah, yeah, they probably do."
Mhm.
But has it come public? No. What happens when it does come public? It'll shut down the association because all sponsors and all TV productions will back out. So that's actually what happened with Pride. Although everyone knew, although it was a given that they had dealings and backings and support with the Yakuza, they still, when it becomes public, Fuji Television backs out, all the big sponsors back out. Yeah, the Yakuza, although it is a part of the culture, it is frowned upon. To be one, to be associated with them, to be working with them, to have any type of interaction with them.
Did you see Josh Barnett's take at the end where he kind of said that he felt Miro and I think Momose were almost sore about not getting the collab events for New Year's Eve, and that he felt that he exaggerated the stories and that's why this thing had been going on for so long and kind of tarnished the name of Pride. Is that a take you agree with?
Like you said, yeah, it was after my career, yeah. So a lot of it, I wasn't even in it anymore. It was so funny because when I retired, I was so burnt out in fighting. I pretty much just disappeared from the whole scene. But knowing Josh Barnett, knowing what Josh knows and how Josh's personality, I would believe Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh is the type of guy that would be very front and he doesn't care about being controversial. He'll be blunt and honest about things. So if Josh said what he said, I would believe what he said. We should actually get Josh on the podcast one day.
We should.
I have a big history with Josh. Long ago, I met Josh when he was 18 years old, when he was fighting at Maurice's gym. Josh is the one who got me into pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Josh, me and Josh have a big background on us, and we have a long time friendship that continues even on today.
Yeah, he's one I want to try and get you guys in a room together if possible, because I feel like
there's
a lot to talk about there.
The funny thing is I met Josh when he was like 16, 17, or 18. And I still see Josh as little Josh,
Really?
Although he's now a big, bad,
huge,
ugly boy now.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got loads of stuff going on. He's always really busy as well, right?
Yes.
A lot of the fighters talked about how they were approached by different organizations, right? And I was wondering, did you ever get approached to come fight for K1 or maybe the Inoki stuff? Did that ever come across your plate?
Again, never. It's so weird because when I saw the episode, I felt like, wow, I was really in a whole different, I was a whole different person from anyone that they could touch. I never got approached by K1, Inoki Bambaye, nothing. I guess that actually makes it gives me a little bit. I feel like they're giving me little props, knowing that my loyalty wouldn't sway with Pride. My loyalty was to Pride. They didn't even try to get me. So that's another one. I just like, wow, these guys were trying to get pulled to different associations. Oh, those buggers never talked to me ever.
Just on this point, do you think there's a moment in your career where people realize that you were different to other foreign fighters? Now, obviously, you spoke Japanese, right? But I'm just thinking, is there anything you can point to specifically that maybe change people's perception of you?
Well, I think as far as the Pride promotion, they knew who I was from the beginning. Already in Shuto, before I even went to Pride, there was a lot of incidents that incidents hit the grapevine, whether it's sports related, fighting related, or underground related. They all knew the stories. They all knew from the beginning who I was and what character I was, and they didn't want to pull any clout with me. They knew they couldn't screw with me. And Pride tried. Pride did.
Yeah.
And they saw the wrath that I had, and how I held them up to their, their reconciliation.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was treated really different, even because I hear stuff from Gary Goodrich, I hear stuff from Mark Kerr, I hear stuff from Rampage that's totally like, whoa, that shit didn't exist with me. I
Yeah.
didn't have any of that fear or worry like they did. And even like fight money offers, I never had. They gave me good fight money. Like Rampage said, he was forced to fight people. They
Mhm.
always gave me 3 opponents that I could pick from, or someone that I wanted to fight. They would get it for me. I want to fight Igor. They get it for me. I want to fight Mark Kerr. I told them, if you want me to fight the Grand Prix, my first fight's going to be Mark Kerr, and they said, well, let's go. So it was weird because a lot of times, it's a totally different situation that I saw than
Mhm.
when I did talk to the foreign fighters.
Yeah, big thing we talked about was yellow cards, right? Like you, like, you just thought like that was for show. And it turns out these guys were getting fined loads of money.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I got yellow cards. I got a yellow card too. They never took anything out of my purse.
This is kind of outside of Pride, but they covered it in the documentary, and I was really curious about it. In the beginning of the episode, they talk about Rickson and obviously how the match with Takada built up. And they talk about when Anjo actually came to Rickson's dojo, right? And they talk about the tape. And Rickson always says, and he says this everywhere he goes, one day I'll show the tape. Why do you think it is that Rickson has never showed that tape?
I don't know because I saw the tape,
Yeah, I remember you saying, right?
and there's nothing that Hickson would want to hide from the tape.
Hmm.
It happened exactly as he said. Anjo came in, they closed the door, shut the press out. The students were still in there. They didn't jump in at all. It was a one-on-one with Anjo and Rickson, and it actually went outside of the mats for a little bit, and then they continued fighting. Went to the middle. Rickson ended up choking him out unconscious after beating him up. And then after, I remember this real specifically, after he choked him out unconscious, Anjo was out laying on the front. He got up, stepped on Anjo's neck, and walked over him. And then went to the door, opened the door for the press to come in.
Oh.
So I don't know. I don't know why he's not releasing it. Is he going to make a big documentary and release it then? Is he going to wait till he sells the tape to some media? Or I can't see any other reason because it's getting to a point where, I mean, you're going to show it now or never. I mean, we're not getting any younger.
Yeah. I think I was listening to Shu Hirata, who was on the documentary. He has a podcast, and he was saying, I think he had heard from someone that in the video he almost like pulled his nose up to get the choke. Or is that? Do you remember that?
No, he did. Well, in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, yeah, you either hook the nose or you fish hook the nose.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a street fight.
Yeah.
So that is definitely not something that Rickson would want to hide or anything. That's
Okay.
totally legal. That's totally I mean, I'd rather get my nose pulled than punched in the face. So I mean, getting your nose hooked and pulled isn't anything worse than getting punched in the face. So
Yeah.
I don't think has any issue to being a reason why they wouldn't want to disclose the video. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why. I wonder why.
It's like a mystic tape. I was so glad when they covered it because it's such an interesting part of the story, right? That this gym fight almost catapults Pride into
And they displayed Anjo as like a real asshole that came and you wanted to beat it like Rickson and stuff. He was probably the best guy in the association. I sparred with all those guys, better than Takada, better than Tamura, better than Takayama, better than anybody. Anjo was the strongest guy that had striking and grappling, that had the best chance of beating Rickson. And he was also not the top star. He was like the third guy in UWF. So even if he lost, they would say, well, Anjo lost, but we still have Takada, But so Anjo was the one that the association sent. They told him you have to go to LA and you have to fight Rickson. And Anjo's game like that, he'll do that. So it wasn't like Anjo was a big dick. He's a super nice guy. He wasn't a dick wanting to take down Rickson or anything. No, it wasn't like that.
he just got sent almost, right?
Yeah, he just got sent and he did what he
Doing his
had
duty,
to do. And
yeah.
he's a ballsy guy and he went to it. And give him credit, man. He did his best and he lost.
And then finally, in terms of Pride, Right. What do you believe is the lasting legacy of Pride?
The lasting legacy, it was the most exciting, it was the most exciting and ever in the history of sport of fighting, that all the top fighters in the world was congregated in one association.
Mhm.
The best fighters in the world.
Awesome. Any
That's
other
the
final
legacy.
thoughts on?
And I don't think they'll ever have another legacy like that. UFC's pretty close to it right now. But now they lost Ngannou. Cyborg's not there. You got some of the prominent, probably one of the pound for pound best in the world, not in the UFC anymore. So that I believe that does take away from the sport or the association actually saying we got the best fighters in the world. Because if you don't have a Cyborg, you don't have a Ngannou. That's a huge chunk. I mean, although it's only one fighter, because they're so prominent, so big time, that's a huge chunk out of that clout to say that we got the best fighters in the world.
Yeah, missing some of the tops in the division. Any final thoughts on the documentary?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was very interesting because Pride was not just a legitimate, professional, well-run, by the books promotion. I think what was good about the whole documentary was it emphasized how crazy it was, and how the Yakuza involvement and the all the plus alphas in the whole thing was like a circus, and it was like almost like being in a movie. I think Pride was like being in a movie. The stuff you had to go through, you seeing Yakuza walking through the back offices. You walk past, you get to meet them. It's a real interesting thing that I don't think any association in the world ever has or ever will have.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, one more question while we're at it. So I felt like the documentary was a little bit negative towards Sakakibara. They almost were kind of pinning quite a lot of it on him. Do you feel that he has any blame for the demise of Pride? But then also, how different do you think RIZIN is from Pride to this day? So, sorry, two questions.
Well, you got to remember that running association like Pride, there's going to be good and bad points. There's going to be hard points and easy points. And Pride was successful because of Sakakibara. And you're going to point the finger and say, "Oh, he's the demise of Pride. He's the one who made it fall apart." That could be possibly that. But you know what? Running that whole association with all the yakuzas coming here and there, with the whole big, you know, the whole stigma of the yakuza involvement in anything, although it is known in Japan, it's such a hard thing to run. And as much as Sakakibara, has his donkey moments and might have made some mistakes that maybe hurt Pride, he's one of the big reasons why Pride was so successful, and he is the reason why RIZIN is so successful today. So I mean, I didn't like the fact that they made Sakakibara look like a bad person or someone who fucked up Pride. Because more than that, I think he was the reason why Pride was what it was, and the reason why MMA rising in Japan is getting a second run now.
Mm-hmm. And how different do you feel the organization of RIZIN is compared to Pride?
Well, the only difference in Rising and Pride now, I think, as far as the Yakuza involvement, as far as all the circus atmosphere, I don't think there's any change. The promotion is still freaking unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only difference is that when Pride started, UFC wasn't really happening, so Pride grabbed all the top fighters. The difference with that now is Rising is starting up after UFC has grabbed all the top fighters. So it's almost feel like that Rising now is in this place where UFC was when Pride was, and UFC now is standing in the shoes that Pride had in the Pride era, and that's the only difference. And for Rising to be the secondary association to try and pull fighters, from the UFC is going to be very difficult, especially in this day and age, how they have exclusive contracts where you only can fight for the UFC. So that makes it a lot harder. In my day, I always had a one fight contract with Pride. So if I had a big offer from another association, I could fight there. And in fact, when I was in Shuto, I was only doing one fight contracts, and that's why I could go and fight in UFC 13 in the midst of my shooter career. And Pride was the same way. I could have done that too, but nowadays it's a little different.
Yeah, makes sense. Switching gears as we close out this podcast, how's the team doing? I saw Rui had a fight in Breaking Down, which looks like he was successful. And then who else you got coming up? You got other fights coming up as well, right?
So next fight is next week. We have Koichi fighting in his pro debut in Deep. That's on March 23rd. Then after that, we have April 6th, we have Yuji fighting in the heavyweights in a pro event called Crossover. And then at the end of April, we have Boo is going to be fighting in an MMA fight for a title match, which is really interesting because he's not a very veteran fighter, but he's actually getting a title match. That shit happens sometimes.
Nice.
And then in May 4th, we're right now in deep talks with Rising for Satari to fight in the Rising the match too. Yeah. So and then we got Animal I'm talking with to fight possibly in Deep in end of May or even in Washington.
Whoa, okay.
With Leonard Gabriel's association. I'm talking with Animal to possibly have an MMA fight there. So it's in negotiations now.
Wow.
Oh, Mecca's going to be fighting next month in Osaka. Bare knuckles. So we got a real busy year, man.
Yeah. Is that in Breaking Down or is that?
That's in Breaking Down, yes.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds super busy. It sounds like every weekend you've got a fighter fighting. So
yeah.
Good luck to you. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Please like, subscribe, share. If anybody has any questions about the Pride stuff that you want to ask Enson, we're going to explore doing some more shows like this, maybe even a live podcast, maybe even just some short video updates. So please put your thoughts in the channel.
Any questions about anything? Because if we get enough questions, we'll run a podcast just talking about the questions.
Indeed, we will. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks for watching. That was my feelings on Dark Side of Pride. If you have any questions, any other topics you want us to talk about, put in the comments. And see you guys later. All right.